Hi, I'm Jack Arnicke, and welcome to the Capital Region Real Estate Today show. Today I'm joined by Anthony Gucciardo, who is the Capital Region's top realtor for almost a decade. That's a pretty impressive record.
Thank you.
Top realtor measured how?
Top realtor measured how there's 3,000 active realtors in the Capital Region, and within the multiple listing service there's a list of top realtors, and based on sales and the amount of closed sales, I finished within the top 5 for the last 8 years.
Wow, congratulations on that.
Thank you.
That's pretty good performance. Now,
thank you.
As we all know, the recent years have had their ups and downs, the economy, the stock market, and all of that. How have you been doing? How's that been for the housing market?
Sales have been great. I mean, in 2012, my company finished with 178 sales. Prior to that, I personally had almost 40 sales in 2012. So the market, despite the current economic conditions throughout the country, upstate New York has been almost exempt from what else has gone on. So I'm very fortunate, and everyone in the Capital Region, for the most part, from a sales perspective, has improved.
And the values have not fluctuated like you've seen in some markets like Florida or Vegas or things like that.
No, Florida and Vegas really took a beating. Here in upstate New York, you've seen consistent growth actually. So it's been favorable for home sellers. If you purchased in 07 or 08 and you overpaid and overimproved, then it's possible you'll lose money. But most people are making money still in this area.
Okay. Now, 2012, you had been with RE/MAX for years, one of the big national firms.
National firm,
yeah. And in 2012, you decided to go out on your own. What did you do that for?
Well, you know, people make decisions in life, business decisions, and I had worked for a broker for a number of years, and I had decided that I wanted to take it to the next level. And 2012 was my first full year in the business as a independent brand, and it was my best year ever in over 10 years. So I can't say that I have any regrets at all. It was a very positive year, and I'm slowly growing my firm, which is great.
A little scary to start, though?
It was scary, yeah. It was definitely scary. I wasn't nervous that I wasn't going to be able to sell houses. I was nervous that the perception of the general public was that, okay, well, this guy was great when he was with RE/MAX and with other companies. Is he going to be as good as Gucciardo Real Estate? And I certainly was.
And it seems interesting, I'm a little longer in the tooth than you are, but years ago, it was primarily independent realtors who would have their own name on the companies. Then the big boys came along, the national companies. Is there a trend really to go back to what you're doing?
You're seeing that now. All the big companies, slowly the top agents are leaving and starting their own firms. Because what happens as a real estate agent, you go and get a 50% or 60% split from a broker, and then they keep 40% of your money. But they're not doing a whole lot to keep that money. So as you get some experience under your belt, and 10 years is what I had before I went on my own, I gave thousands and thousands of dollars away to brokers, and it just wasn't worth it. It was not worth it at all.
Now, with the economy, I mean, you went out on your own at what some might consider a reasonably dicey time to do something like that. Has the economy affected your ability to perform the past couple of years?
Interest rates are still at an all-time low, so I have found that it's still favorable to sell a house in this market. It was a little turbulent starting out, but within 2-3 weeks we were up and running, and everything has been great. We're now coming into the springtime here. Before you know it, it'll be summer, and the economy, I think people, when they first hear the initial report on the news, they get scared, but they realize that that's just the media, and then they immediately move on and make their decision to do what they're doing.
And what do you see next year out, next 2 years out?
I think you're going to definitely see it continue to slowly improve. I do think that people are a little hesitant because they think interest rates are going to go up, but overall it's been very positive in this area. So.
And when you started on your own, you did mention that people were kind of concerned about leaving a big firm, going out on your own. Are you going to be able to confirm? Was that the biggest concern that you found?
I think sometimes people want that national name, but a lot of people realize that national name they give you, it's like going into a Walmart. Everything, regardless of where you go, which store you go in, is set up exactly the same. And that's how traditional brokerage works, such as Coldwell Banker, Realty USA. They're large firms, and what they do is they have a set system of marketing. They give the agents a set split. They tell you they're going to put you here, here, or here. And with my firm, I'm able to control the advertising from day one. I can make changes immediately. I can put houses in newspapers that other brokers don't necessarily do. So there's a lot of benefits you have to going with an independent firm.
But do you, in some sense, lose the connection with other parts of the country? You have somebody here who wants to sell, wants to buy, and...
Most people are going on Google now, so I get a lot of international referrals, not only international, but national here within the U.S., people moving from California. And a lot of real estate is word of mouth. So what people are hearing is that they are moving to the Albany area, their brother or sister lives in the area, and they want to work with a top agent. So they go to Google, my name pops up. So that's how it works.
What about people who try to do it on their own, the FSBOs, for sale by owners and so on?
86% of for sale by owners end up listing with a realtor. So I don't think it's that high. It's probably even higher now. That's the figure when I originally started, and I know that number's climbed. But a lot of my business is for sale by owner. People often want to try and save the commission and try, but you know what? I had a situation once where two sellers were trying to sell their house on their own. They had gold chains, they had tattoos. The house was priced perfectly, but the buyers were scared of these two guys. They didn't want to buy the house from them. I took over. Within 5 days, I sold the house. A lot of times, buyers don't want to deal with a seller directly. They want that third party. That real estate agent, such as myself or anyone else, acts as that third party to facilitate the sale.
And basically, it's you're dealing with somebody who's done a lot of these. You know the business end of it.
Over 1,000 sales in 10 years. Yeah.
But I would imagine as with anything where you have a lot of legal paperwork involved, there are 1,000 traps involved that you could fall into that you know.
We know the home inspectors. We know the banks. We know who to use, who not to use, and that's what you're paying for. People will say, "Oh, you sold my house quick. You made 6%." Sometimes it happens, but we have a lot of houses that sit for 6 months, and we truly earn our commission. A lot more than a house that sells in 2 days. But there's a lot of behind the scenes that myself as a realtor does that sellers don't necessarily know about, that protects them and allows them to get as much money for their house as possible.
Why should somebody pick you with 10 years experience as opposed to a guy down the street with 30?
Well, something, when you're getting on a plane or you're going in for surgery, you probably want the guy with the most experience. But what I have found that has happened in real estate is the people the realtors in the business for 30 years, they haven't necessarily adapted to the technology. They don't text, they don't do the virtual tours. Some of them don't even have email, and this is true. I mean, this is not something I'm making up. I think you get more energy. I think you get, depending on the house you're selling, there's a lot of first-time home buyers. So I'm not saying that anybody with 30 years experience isn't going to do a good job for you. I just think that there's certain agents out there you need to make sure that their primary focus is being a full-time realtor, and they're not at the end of their career just doing it part-time. Because that's what you see happening in this area. You see a lot of the names that have been around a long time are getting to the end of their career. They've been doing it 30, 35 years. And they've made their money, they're comfortable, and they might not be as hungry as a new agent like myself. And I shouldn't say I'm new because I've been doing this a decade, but at 30 years old, you still have the drive in you to go out there and do it.
And is that really how you can differentiate yourself from the other 3,000 agents? You just got the hunger and the drive.
I got the hunger, the drive, and I have 10 years of success under my belt. I love the business. I love driving around, putting up sold signs, putting sale pending signs up, and I love doing a good job for my clients. And I think some people come into this as it's an actual job. It is obviously my career and job, but it's fun. I love it. I enjoy it. I've been doing it for years. So that's where I'm different too, because I didn't come into real estate after working for the Department of State or for any other firm for 30 years. I came into the field at 21 years old, fresh. So there's no, it's not like I had any baggage from another field where some people come from.
And you've covered your learning curve already.
I've covered it substantially.
You do some different stuff as far as advertising is concerned. What do you do differently than the traditional things that, let's say, a Coldwell Banker or a Remax or somebody like that would do?
Well, what I've started to do is I've been putting the houses on billboards. For years, I know people have probably seen my face on a lot of billboards. And what I have done now is I'm putting the actual listings, the houses, on the billboards. And that's opening up the exposure to a seller's house by thousands of people a day. Because if somebody's driving down Route 7 in Latham, the traffic count is 50 or 60,000 cars. there's a lot of traffic that could potentially see that house. So not only that, a lot of it's I still enter my listings myself. If my seller lists their house with me, I do not go back to the office and say, here, secretary, write about this house I just got. All the advertising comes straight directly through me. I'm in the house, I know the house, might not know the house as well as the sellers, but as their agent, you better believe that I'm going to make sure that listing stands out.
Okay. What about complaints? You've got a lot of customers.
A lot of customers. Yeah, right now I have 70. I know where you're going with this question. Do I get complaints?
Yeah.
So a lot of agents, no matter who you are, how many houses you sell, you're going to work with people in this business who aren't happy with your services.
That's called customers.
Customers.
That's just the way
I have found that in 10 years, I am called into very negative situations. Divorces, separations, somebody unexpectedly dies, somebody's losing their house. Generally, those types of people in those situations are not going to be the easiest to deal with, and are not going to want to see a real estate agent making a 6 or 7% commission while they're going through a tumultuous time in their life. So I have found that no matter what you do and how hard you work, things will get twisted around. You're not going to please everyone. But I can confidently say that for 10 years I've been doing this, as I said, I am certain that 80% of my clients would relist with me. Out of 150 sales a year that I make on average, at least 125, 130 would work with me again. You're always going to have people think they could have got more or think you didn't pay it. It's not always a hand-holding process. I'm always available by text, by phone, by email, but you're not necessarily in contact every single day with your clients. You probably talk within every once a week, twice a week, depending on the customer or the client, I should say. But no, I don't think any realtor out there can say that every single person loves working with them. There's always going to be issues.
Oh yeah.
And you just have to address them and make them better. And move on. That's all you can do.
That's the way life works. Somebody wants to sell their house. What's the best place to spend your money to make it as saleable as possible?
Usually, well, it all depends. But coming into the spring or summer, you obviously want the curb appeal when they initially pull up. You want it to look as fresh as possible. Kitchen declutterizing. I get called to a lot of houses where people say, well, we want to put a new kitchen, we want to do a new bathroom. Well, that's great, but if there's $50,000 worth of work that needs to be done, doing one or two things is not going to help.
No.
A lot of times it's better to do it as is. So I usually say that a clean house, a house that's free of clutter, is easier to sell than if it's all updated and full of clutter. Okay. So that question really needs to be answered on an individual basis per house.
Okay. Summer the best time to sell a house?
Not necessarily. Albany, New York, upstate New York, year-round area. I've never had a month where I haven't sold a house in almost 11 years now. So houses sell year-round. There tends to be more buyers looking, but if you get 50 or 60 people through an open house on a summer day, 80% of them are not serious. They're out for a summer walk, they're out for a summer drive, they saw the sign and they came in. So open houses, there was just a big video on 2020 about open houses. It's strictly for the realtor benefit, the listing agent's benefit. So summer is not the best time to sell a house. Year-round in upstate New York you can sell.
What about the different, you say you can sell year-round, true, but are there incentives that you have to offer, let's say in a slower time of year, in a slower economy? Is there
price is key. If you price the property right, the house will sell, whether it be January 15th or July 15th. Mm-hmm. It's a matter of pricing the property and supply and demand. Now, obviously, if you live on a lake and you have a boat and a dock, you might get a little more money in July or August than if you listed it in the dead of winter in the middle of an ice storm. But it only takes one person, only one person has to look. So, but it comes down to price.
Much activity with short sales or foreclosures around here? Well,
again, go ahead.
I know what a foreclosure is, and I think most people do, but what about a short sale? Just explain what that is.
A short sale basically means you purchase the house for $150 and the market has changed. You owe $150 still, and the house has diminished in value, and it's only worth $130. You're $20,000 short. If you can prove some type of financial hardship, such as a job loss, whatever the case may be, you can approach the bank in what's called a short sale, asking them to take less and forgive the debt. Happens a lot. We've handled probably 30 of them in the last 5 years. I can't say I personally handle them. I have an agent who works on my team who does, but she has a 95% success rate. So it is possible to do a short sale. Foreclosure basically means you've stopped paying, it's been a year, the bank comes in and they take the house and they give it to an agent to sell.
Okay, so they just want to move it.
They just want to move it. Yeah, they're not going to negotiate at that point.
As a realtor, we've been talking a lot about selling. Can you also represent a buyer?
Yes, I can represent both parties. The way it works is you owe the seller confidentiality and loyalty, the buyer fair and honest business dealing. Say you hire me to sell your house and you tell me that the roof leaks. That's considered a latent defect. I would have to disclose that to the buyer.
Right.
If you told me that you were getting divorced, that's something that I keep between you and I. So there are times, and probably 50% of my sales, 50% of my listings, I sell myself. So that does happen. It's perfectly legal as long as there's full disclosure.
Okay, and you can represent someone as a buyer and as a seller at the same time?
At the same time.
Really?
In other words, I list a house, the buyer calls me, I bring the buyer in, I explain to them the whole process, and it can be done. Happens every day.
Okay, and is there some commission paid on each side then at that point?
Yeah, there's a buyer and seller. The buyer would not pay a commission generally if you have a buyer agent agreement, and that goes into a whole different ballpark. But if you have a listing agreement with the seller is going to pay.
And if somebody is coming from Sheboygan, say, to work at Albany Nanotech and needs help in buying a house, hires you as a buyer agent, how does that work?
Possibly a fee. Generally, the seller pays, but if you're going to be showing somebody around as a tour guide, sometimes we do charge a 1.5% buyer agent fee.
Okay.
And that's basically to almost act like as a tour guide and liaison to familiarize the person with this area.
And speaking about tech, which I just mentioned, has that had an impact around here? Have you noticed the fact that Global Foundries and Albany Nano are having impact?
A lot of the buyers are renting because their positions are temporary. So I don't think we've seen a huge shoot up in price yet. And I think in time we will. But as of right now, there have been some buyers, but not anything noticeable where you'd say, oh my God, the houses are going to go through the roof. So.
But has that been part of the process of keeping the market steady in the downtime?
I think it helps. I think anybody who's buying a house now, if I'm thinking myself to buy maybe 10 single-family houses, and in 20 years, my guess is they'll double. So I do think this is a definite area to invest in. I just don't think if you purchased a house for $350 2 years ago, it's not worth $500 because nanotech's here or the chip plant's coming. So I think that's what people think, is that it's going to create this immense growth, and I think it will in time. But in the short term, I don't think you're seeing that.
But still, if you bought a house for $350 here, and you bought a house for $350, say in Syracuse or Rochester, you will
do much better in
here.
Albany.
You will not there.
You will not there. You will lose in Syracuse, Rochester, Buffalo. In Albany, New York, and the nanotech and the chip plant in Malta. There's more growth in a 30-mile radius within Albany than in the entire state of New York. So this is a true up-and-coming area, and there's still time to jump on the train to get to where you want to go.
Good.
So
well, good for us, I guess.
Absolutely.
What about referrals? Do you receive a lot of them? Is it better to receive a referral or a lead from advertising? What?
I do get a lot of referrals. Being in the business 11 years, a lot of referrals come to me as neighbors are thinking of selling, and they say, hey, let's call that guy on the billboard because he sold our other neighbor's house. So I get a lot of indirect referrals, and I do get a lot of personal referrals where a former client will call me and say, hey, call so-and-so because they want to sell their house. Both are great. Some come from they come from all walks of life. So they're all good, though.
When you are a licensed real estate broker, is there a borderline on the area of license?
What do you mean borderline?
Are you confined to New York State for buying?
I am confined to New York State.
Okay,
yeah,
but it is a statewide thing.
Yeah, I can go to New York City. I can go to Long Island. I can go anywhere in New York State. We do have broker reciprocity with some other states, such as maybe Vermont or New Jersey. I'm not 100% sure. That means we can cross the lines and possibly participate in real estate transactions. I'm not 100% sure if we have relationships, but generally it's with neighboring states such as Connecticut, Jersey, anywhere where we're right on the line, Vermont. But no, in New York State, we're governed by Department of State.
Business Review, I've noticed the Capital District Business Review, the business newspaper around here, has stopped putting out the list of the
top realtors.
Yeah, the top realtors. How come?
There's a lot of real estate can be very, very cutthroat, and I think what happened with the top realtors list being discontinued is some of the senior brokers who didn't have the higher numbers on the list felt that agents were competing on listings, showing potential sellers those numbers and losing business. So the real estate board decided to do away with the statistics and no longer share the information with the Business Review, and that's what happened.
Okay.
Unfortunately, in this world, it's very competitive, so I'm shocked that something like that happened in the Albany area, but I'm not on the real estate board. I don't make those decisions. But I will tell you that a lot of people were upset that the statistics were taken away. There's still ways to get them. It's just not through our multiple listing service.
Explain how the commissions work. I know you can't be specific, but basically, how does the commission structure work?
Commissions are negotiable, so all companies charge different. I can't get into too much about commission on the air, but commissions are negotiable depending on the house, the price, the motivation of the client, but they are negotiable. Do
you specialize in a particular price range?
I sell all types of houses, whether somebody calls me to sell an $80,000 house in South Troy or a $1 million house in Loudonville, or I go all over. So as a real estate agent, my average sale price tends to be around $300,000. So I tend to deal with the houses, selling houses for people who purchased them originally as a first-time home buyer, and then they're upgrading. I tend to deal with that market a lot. So I also deal with a lot of people downsizing, people who are in their 60s, 70s, selling the big colonial. So I'm all over the map.
Okay, but it's interesting. And 300 grand is roughly an average price for around here. Or is
around here, Albany County. Well, Albany County, the average sale price is about $220, I believe. So it's slowly coming up. But generally, when somebody's upgrading, they're spending between $300,000 and $400,000.
If you bought a house between, say, 2006, 2008. In that time when the market was really hitting the skids, when the overall economy was hitting the skids, is this a time to sell it, or is this a time to hang on to it?
I would hang on to it. I mean, if you have to sell, that's great, and I'd be happy to help you, but I still think you're going to see further appreciation here. I think you're going to see 1% to 3% a year. So in 10 years, that adds up.
Okay, I know you've got some questions that have been emailed in. I'd like to get through a couple of them. Linda in Guilderland, quote, I am currently in the market with another real estate company. We've been listed for 2 months. There have been only a couple of showings. We haven't heard from our agent. How can I get out of the agreement, and what are my options? Is there a way to get out of that before the time limit is up?
Yes, you can fire a realtor. You can ask for what's called an unconditional withdrawal agreement. Happens all the time. Sometimes things change. You don't work well with the realtor. You can fire them. So, in answer to your question, Linda,
is there a penalty for that?
Sometimes there is. Sometimes there not. Depends on the broker. But if you have a valid complaint and things aren't going well, you can definitely end that agreement.
And who determines validity?
It would be a conversation between the broker and the seller. Yeah, but if she hasn't heard from her agent and there's a communication lapse, it might be time for a new realtor.
Okay, all right. Martha in Loudonville, we listed our house in May and we received calls from Central Showing Service. Do you deal with that company? We are not having a third party set up showings. What are our options?
So she's not happy with Central Showing, it seems.
It kind of sounds that way.
Yeah, we can arrange showings directly, so you don't have to use the showing company. A lot of agents right now are using the showing company, and what they're doing is a third party in Texas is calling the sellers to set up showings, and things are getting confused and mixed up. So as my own broker owner, we can control the showings personally. You get that personalized service more.
But an outfit like this, would they be making more of an effort to stage? Not necessarily more of an effort, but are they kind of like staging consultants, or do they?
They're not staging consultants. What they're doing is they're arranging showings for all the realtors. So all the realtors are calling into a place to set up showings for other properties.
And showings, you mean open houses?
No. Showings meaning showings for buyers who want to see the house. Private showings. Okay. And the times do get mixed up, and there are mistakes that happen. But I know as I said, as my own broker owner, we are able to facilitate showings personally, basically bypassing the service of showing time.
Okay. Do a lot of realtors use these third party?
All of them. All of them right now, yeah. A lot of them do. Yep.
How new a phenomenon is that?
Within the last 2 years, they started doing that. So it makes our jobs easier, but there's been mistakes. So certain sellers will have more personalized service where we set the showings up ourselves.
Interesting. I'd never heard of that third party aspect of it. Okay. Peter from Niskayuna, you sold a friend of mine's house in 2 days with multiple offers back in 2008 when the market was apparently getting soft. Is it possible to get multiple offers in this market? Do you recommend pricing a house so low that there is a bidding war like back in the seller's market a few years ago that I remember when it was really fun to watch.
It was hot. It was hot. I'm still seeing multiple offers. Here in 2013, it's very common. Even after a house has been on the market 60 days, sometimes two buyers want it at once, they bid the price up. So you're not seeing that 10, 20, or 30,000 above list price anymore, but you're still seeing multiple offers and people are getting close to list, maybe a little above or right below. So it is, I recommend aggressively pricing it so that you sell it quickly, but if you want to try it a little higher, you certainly can. Just be prepared to come down if it doesn't sell.
Is that a negative when you're selling a house? Because every once in a while you see a sign
price reduced.
Price reduced. Is that?
I think it's better to start at a fair price and sell it rather than sit. Because the longer you sit, the less you get.
Do you find people who are selling often have a higher value in mind than reality?
Always. Not always. 98% of the time, yeah. It's very rare that I go in and people say, no, that's too high, we want less. So they always want more.
How do you determine a fair price?
Well, doing this 11 years and working with buyers, working with sellers, you just tend to learn the market value of what a colonial brings, what a ranch brings. So.
And location, I guess.
Correct. That's very important.
Those are the three.
Those are the three most important words: location, location, and supply and demand. So.
Okay. And Kathy from Clifton Park, is it possible to sell a house and close on a new one without moving twice? We are thinking of selling our Hanover Colonial and going to Summit Hills and Half Moon. So sell, have to park the stuff someplace and yourself, and then move someplace else.
It's very possible. So what you basically do is you have me come out, list the house, and I take a look at it. We price it aggressively, and then we basically make a contingency offer on you trying to find the other house of your choice. At 98% of the time, it does work out. But I'd have to answer that question in person and look at the situation. So
generally, how long is a contingency? All right, I have a
30 to 90 days.
30 to 90 days. That's usually enough time?
That's usually enough time. Yeah, in this market. Yep, you're usually able to sell them. So.
If you're doing that, if you're selling a house looking to, as in this case, move someplace else, is it a good idea when you're doing that to already have a very firm idea of where you're going to go?
Yes. Yeah, that's very important. You want to make sure that you're not just going nowhere. You want to make sure you have a place to go. So.
Okay. And Marion Ballston Spa, and I think you've answered it already. Do you see the market getting any better when the tech park buyers start moving in?
I think we've answered it. I think you will start to see an improvement here in the area. So.
Okay. And let's see, just a couple of other points. Where do you see the market going over the next 1 to 3 years, let's say?
I think it's going to improve. I think you're going to see...
Is it going to be one of those dramatic things where you
I don't think it's going to be dramatic like you saw in 03 to 06.
Yeah.
But I think it's going to be a stable 1 to 3% a year. And I do think that this is a great area to buy in. And I would just like to take this time to thank my past, present, and future clients. For 11 years, I've had a tremendous amount of success, and it's not only my hard work, but it's the trust and support of so many of my clients and family and friends who refer me. So it's been a true pleasure to sell so many houses in the upstate New York area, and I'm very thankful, and I look forward to another great 10 years.
Good. And how do people reach you? I know Gucciardo might not be the easiest name to spell.
AnthonyGucciardo.com, which we'll put on the screen, and 331-3785 is my cell phone. You can email me or call me anytime, and I look forward to helping anybody. And I know real estate can be quite the stressful process, so I'm here to help if anybody has any questions.
Any closing thoughts?
No, I just want to thank everyone again, and thank you for watching the Real Estate Today show, and thank you for hosting this today, Jack.
It's been my pleasure. It's been an interesting and educational experience for me, so I really appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you.
Thank you, Anthony. Thank you all very much for joining us. We certainly do appreciate you watching the Capital District Real Estate Today program, and have yourself a wonderful day, and if you're selling, you know where to look. Take care.